Hey guys, I'm Craig Slate.
And I'm Edward Todd.
And you're listening to
The Fresh CrEd.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
That was high energy.
That's different, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
very different. That's very nice.
Hey, who's that?
This guy?
Yeah. You recognize him?
I was a waiter, and you guys just invited me in. I don't know what this is. I feel like I'm sitting between two ferns right now.
We look for some ferns.
You should have got ferns.
Ferns are that's a great show, by the way.
That's hilarious. It's one of the best ones out there. It's wonderful.
So I don't think we have to introduce this guy, but we
You can
will
see me in the
anyway,
post
'cause
office
it's
and the
only-
wanted posters, right? Is that what you're saying?
It's only
Take
out of
it easy on
respect.
him. This
Only
might
out
be
of
his first time on a podcast.
I realize he's a bit nervous, so we're going to take it easy.
Petrified. Yeah, I am. I had to see my therapist this morning just to get me through this.
Get ready.
Yeah, a lot of breathing exercises.
Took a little coaching,
Yeah, I need to be coached up. That's why I'm here.
So this is Mr. Todd Linsky. He is the founder of the entire organic movement in the produce industry. And so
I put the O in organic. That was it.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he lived an organic life. He was from the organic world. He used to walk the streets of Bakersfield barefooted, just to show his
Backwards.
backwards and barefooted. So Todd, tell us about the organic world and how you founded it.
I found it.
Did it start in a log cabin?
It started a log cabin. Well, actually, I was in a covered wagon, and I built a log cabin. Moved to the Sierras, built a log cabin. It's a long story.
It's a long story.
No,
Were mushrooms involved in this, and not the healthy gun?
Back then, truthfully, to be honest with you, there was guys making more money selling pot back then than they were doing vegetables, right? They did the vegetables as a cover to grow the pot. That's a big part of what the industry was.
Cover crop, so to speak.
100%.
The cover crop was veg. Yeah.
The very first organic farm I ever went to when I started this adventure, and I was up here up by Santa Cruz. We pulled up on this farm, and there was a gal out there pulling weeds. She was topless.
Pulling weed or weeds?
Weeds with a D. Well, yeah, I guess it'd be the same thing. But she was weeding out there. She's pulling weeds. She was topless. And I thought, what the hell? What is happening? No, seriously, like what is happening? We take a tour of the farm. It's a true story. Take a tour of the farm. We go into this barn, right? Because I want to show you my barn. And I walk in the barn. I don't know. It's fairly decent size. It wasn't a small place. And hanging from the rafters of this barn was just an unlimited amount of pot plants hanging from ropes. And I said, that was my very first organic farm I ever walked on. I thought to myself, I was 18, 19 years old. I thought.
So why are you walking? What are you interviewing for a job? What are you doing?
No, we were selling stuff. We were selling product back then, but it was like the first one I ever went to up here. And it was just a trip. I was like, oh my God, this really is what it was back then. And now it's completely changed.
Because now they can have it. It's legal.
Well, now it's legal and they all have vape pipes, right? But, it's the transformation of this industry is so interesting to watch because when I started back, the days before electricity, there was no shelf space. We weren't on the shelves, right? We dialed for dollars every day. We got hung up on countless times trying to find places to put product. So to see it back then and be a part of that experience and then come to an event like this or to walk into a retailer anywhere around the world today and see the presence of this category, it's really wild to see. And it's also really wild to reflect back upon where this industry started to where it is today and the difference in trajectory. Well, the goal is still the same, right? There's a different level of trajectory. There's a different level of vibe out there than there was back then. And I think because I've been doing this for so long, because I've seen it from the perspective, especially the last 8 years doing my own independent consulting, it's just got a really unique perspective to it. It's still a fascinating business, right? And I think what I find more fascinating about it today is that we're farther away, I think, from appreciating the true value of food than we were back then.
Really?
Yeah, I really believe that. I really believe that we've worked really hard to make food cheap and less valuable in the consumer's minds in a lot of ways. And I think it's a really dangerous narrative. I'm going to go down a deep, dark trail if you want or not.
No, we like
But
it.
you don't think it's a question of extremes? I think it's kind of one extreme to one side or the other.
No, I really don't. I think that in our country we are so blessed with having a food supply. We are so blessed with the fact that so much comes from here, and that we live in a world that, you turn on the TV, it works. You turn on the lights, it come on. I mean, there's a lot of that. We don't really suffer for food in this country like they do in other places, and I think that it allows itself to change the narrative a little bit. And I think that we don't necessarily appreciate our food supply in the mannerism that we should. I mean, look how we feed our kids in schools, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it ain't great food, right? But when you start to feed the kids better food at school, you start to change the trajectory of the future for them. You start to change that narrative. So to me, that's one of the areas I really started to focus on, really start to think about is what is that value today?
But why was it better back then? Why do you think the narrative was better?
In the organic movement back then, I think people were much more grounded to it because it was, remember, it was super small. It was very niche. It was very much mom and pop health food stores. It wasn't in Safeway. It wasn't in Albertsons. It wasn't in, Whole Foods had one store, right? So it wasn't this mass stream. So I think that at that point, while it still exists today, and I don't want to be this negative Nancy that it's a big thing, but it's a definite change. I think people are a little bit more passionate, but they also had, I think, a deeper connection with food. We don't have that same connection in a lot of ways. So I think it's, again, it's not a criticism of anything anybody's going on, but I think it becomes a thought process of like, how much do we really value food? I ask a question all the time. I asked it this morning in the panel I was monitoring, and the blank expressions on people's faces when you ask the question, like, how do you value food? They're not 100% sure how to answer that question. So it's an interesting. It's an interesting path to walk. It's very fortunate to be on the path too.
So in that
amazing.
question, so I'm going to flip that question back on you then.
Yeah,
so how do you value food?
Well, I think you have to look at food in a multiplicity of ways. What's food doing for our climate? What's food doing for our health? What's food doing for our economy? And I look at food and kind of peel it back from that. Obviously, the health benefits of food are astronomical. You look at what they're doing with prescription programs today. They're talking about starting, little prescription programs for produce. Why take a pill if you can eat an apple? But we don't think about that. So I think that's something we need to work at valuing more. You look at the climate issues. So many things can be rectified through better agricultural practices and doing things a little bit differently. There's climate mitigation that can happen. And certainly economic factors are massive when it comes to agriculture. So to me, when I think about valuing food, it's not about the calories. It's about what is food doing for the bigger overall goal of making a better planet.
Okay.
That was deep thought, man.
That is deep.
I am
That's a lot.
literally exhausted.
That's a lot to chew on.
I think he's chewed on some mushrooms. That's what I'm.
Not before this.
Not today, anyway.
Not today. No, but I mean, so to answer your question, the original question, the industry has been very, very unique to watch. It's been frustrating at times. I think we've eaten our own a little bit. I think we've been a lot, as you would expect in some ways, and I mean, they'll be mad if I say it, but the organic people, a little disorganized in a lot of ways, and that's hurt the business in some fashions and being better, being more connected, and doing some bigger, better things. But I remain optimistic and positive, and think that this is a great industry, and I think food is medicine, and I think it's valuable, and I think we need to be talking like that. I think we need to be pushing the ball down the field and working with the healthcare providers and school providers and changing it, because quite frankly, I think the fastest way you're going to change the food narrative of this country is start feeding kids better at school and start teaching them what we didn't learn. You ate square pizza with tomato sauce.
Oh, for sure.
Freaking corn dogs and made fish sticks on Friday.
God,
Shut
it was
up.
good too, man.
But the tartar sauce, glow in the dark tartar sauce. Come on.
Wasn't a big fan of that. I got to be honest.
No.
Yeah,
So
Sloppy Joe was my name.
Somehow I can believe that.
Sloppy Joe.
I mean, seriously, don't you? I mean, if I think about what would be for him, it'd be Sloppy Joe.
Sloppy Joe.
I could see you eating a sloppy Joe with a fork and knife.
A spork.
Not then. No,
it was a sport.
The CrEd of today.
And the peel back grape juice.
Yeah, I wasn't a germaphobe when I was a kid. I didn't,
Are you one now?
I am. Well, okay, people define me as that. I don't really think of myself as one, but.
Well, if people have defined you as a germaphobe, I'm pretty sure they figured out you were a germaphobe.
Just because I don't like to
wear a
drink
t-shirt?
after people, and I like people to wash their hands. That's two things that are really important to me.
All right, well, that's fair.
I don't like to drink after them, and I like for them to wash their hands on a regular basis.
All right, I'm fair with that.
That's kind of just good manners. I don't know if that's a germaphobe.
That's what I say.
Yeah, okay, I go with that. Yeah, I wouldn't call you a germaphobe.
But I check with people, make sure they wash their hands. Sometimes people.
Okay, but that might be weird.
Find
I mean, you're not standing outside the bathroom door with like hand check, are you? Get your sanitizer out there.
Just ask them, hey, you did wash your hands, right? Or make sure you wash your hands. That's just a reminder.
I like that.
Yeah,
I can respect that. I can respect that.
So I'm curious before we move past this. So was she wearing sunscreen or what?
Yeah, I don't know at that point. I mean, I would assume so. I would hope so. Probably not. Maybe probably had patchouli. I would think something. Yeah, it was really wild. I mean, to jump out of the truck.
Really healthy.
No, but to jump out of the truck and start right there was like, oh, this is really.
That was probably when you thought to yourself,
"Oh, I'm in. I'm all in."
One that got pot hanging in the rafters.
Yeah, but what we were saying, I think before we started recording, it's like there was guys that was the business model, right? They made cash at the farmers market, unreported for the most part, and they grew, illegal grows up in the foothills of Santa Cruz, and that was how it worked. And these guys would take off for 3 months and go surfing and whatever the case was. It was really, really the wild, wild west back then. It was truly the alternative, as the category is today. I believe organics has always been an alternative to what's out there. And I think it was that as well.
I'm pretty sure in the organic produce archive history books, that part of the story is not going to be how we got into
Probably
this
not.
industry. So, but that's
No,
great
probably not.
for everybody listening. This is like that's the real story.
Yeah, I mean, it was a real big part of it. Yeah.
You're peddling wares at the organic farms.
Yeah.
You wind up at a grocery store, correct?
Well, I started retailing first. I stumbled into a job in a natural food store in San Diego, and I thought it was a great gig. Worked from 3 to 10, night manager, play golf in the morning, go to that, type of a deal. Yeah, it was perfect at my age.
Yeah.
And the produce department was a complete debacle. I mean, it was just a disaster. I mean, it was just half the stuff could have just walked out itself the back door, right? And so I went to the leadership at the store. I went to the owners. I was like, look, I don't know anything about produce. So there's no way I can make it any worse, right? I mean, so so let's give it a shot and see what we could do. And so I took that challenge on and went up to the street in Los Angeles, and the market. The store was down in San Diego, and I went down to the market in Los Angeles and had a friend of a friend that was up there, and he kind of toured me around a little bit and gave me, I'll never forget, wearing a tie. It looked like a complete just schmo. And, knocked on some doors like, how can I buy organic produce? How can I get stuff, for my store? And I went into a company called S&S Produce, which was starting off in Los Angeles at the time, was the Shearer brothers, which were instrumental in starting, especially Tony Shearer, instrumental in starting the organic movement in a lot of ways here in California. He's now leading that same charge in Australia today. And I walked in and I said, hey, I'm, Todd, and I'm with this market, and I really would like to buy produce from you, and I need organic produce for my store. And he said, oh, that Mark? I said, hold on a second. And I'm sitting in there, and I'm wearing a.
God, I'd like to see.
I'd
like to see young Todd.
It was so good. I mean, if it would have been a clip on, it would have just been the cherry on the sundae. And he came back out with a stack of papers.
You took a lot of initiative there, right?
Oh yeah,
So,
totally. Well, I had nothing to
you
lose.
were operating way outside of your job.
100%. Just walked in cold.
So do you remember where, like, the aha moment was, or the catalyst to made you go that extra mile?
Well, I know I had to get it done, and I felt the pressure because I said I would get it done, so I believed in that. But, when he came back out, he had this stack of papers, and he walked in, and he slammed these papers down on the desk I was sitting, just drop it. And he looked right at me, he goes, why don't you pay these effing bills first, and then I'll sell you.
Oh, my God.
And I mean, what would you do at that moment, right? I walk in, like, all of a sudden, like it'd be in a bank robbery. Like, I don't know what the hell to do at this point. And I looked at it, and I looked at the deal and what it was and the amount of money that it was, and I just looked him straight in the face, and I'll tell you what, if you believe in me, I'll get these bills paid, but I need to buy produce. And he took a step back, and he said, okay. And I got his bills paid. I bought produce from him, turned around, and he actually hired me, and I was on the street in Los Angeles.
Get the hell out.
Buying for retail and doing that, and I brokered on the street, so he'd start at 1:30 in the morning, and you'd work until 1:30, 2:30, 3 in the afternoon. Always try to get out of LA before traffic hit.
Yeah.
And you'd put in those 12-hour days every day, hustling produce and dialing for dollars and trying to get stuff done. And from there, we created the very first grower-shipper operation in organics called Ocean Organic Produce with Bud Capurro in his old cabbage shed in Moss Landing. That was before Earthbound really got rolling. I remember when Drew came in and they brought in the very first bag of packaged salads that they did, and they were doing it in the garage.
What year was that when they brought
That was in the late 80s. I'm trying to think when Earthbound started the pack. It might have been the early 90s.
Yeah,
probably 1990, something like that. You get back that far, it's a little fuzzy. But so we started doing that, and then from there, Cal Organic was really, really small, just getting started. And I met Danny before, and
where was Cal? So they were
they
operating.
they were operating. They were really small. They just started with a 1/4 acre of butter lettuce. They were doing some stuff. They were kind of getting going, a few acres, nothing really major, but he was doing a really good job. He was always about quality. And they approached him about selling his deal, and he said, well, in a nutshell, sure, I'm interested, I guess, but I want somebody on the farm. And he asked me to come down and move down to the farm, which I did, and wasn't married at the time, and moved down there to Bakersfield, and we started that. And he did it for a while, and then we broke off and started our own. He didn't want to continue with that, started his own sales company. And from there, it was dialing for dollars. It was trying to put food on the shelves, but it was really quality based. It was really about the number one thing. It was always about quality. Like, fill the box, right? Like, so you throw an extra 5 chard leaves in a box. Is it really going to move the needle? No, it's not, but it's going to be an appearance that people are going to say, this is fantastic stuff. So that was a really great backbone to have, because when you're dealing with quality as the number one thing, people will forget about the price, but they'll always remember the quality. And so it was super, super important, and recognize that. So that really helped us build that. And that went along for quite a while, and then industry changed, started to grow, started to kind of get going. And this was also when I got started, it was pre-Alla, pre-60 Minutes, which was really the precursor to a lot of the growth that happened. I mean, it goes way back. And Grimway came in, and they were looking to sell the place. There was multiple buyers, but Grimway was the one that ended up buying the place. And then I stuck around and had the opportunity and a good fortune for Bob Grimm to say he wanted to build this thing, and gave a great runway and a lot of freedom, and was able to really start to develop and put some programs in place that never had happened before, you know, getting retailers to replace conventional items with organic only, and working on how to do that, but from the perspective of not like I've got to be $15. It's like, well, what does your retail need to be? Like, well, where can we push your retail, and how do we work backwards to make it profitable to the farm? And that was really the first opening strategy we did when we put it into the mass market. It was something that I was really proud of doing and worked really hard, especially with the boys who now turned into Ahold. But back then it was Edward Stores and Giant and Carlisle, and the boys, Jeff Boyer and his team, were so embracing the process of trying to grow this industry amongst other retailers in the very beginning. But that was really one of the first retailers that went really mass market.
East Coast.
Yeah, really mass market TV commercial. They really went at it. And they were driven by their wives. Their wives believed in it. The CEO's wife, Tony Schiano's wife, Sue, believed in it. And Jeff's wife, Sue, believed in it. And it was really something that pushed it. So we had a really unique runway to create something very different, because we went at it, and I think what I believe in today, you went at it understanding each person's business, right? Just because it's good for you and it's not good for me, that's not a win. It's like, how do we find the ground that I got to make money, because it does me no good to lose money and sell you. That's a pretty short runway.
Yeah.
You've got to make money, because it's the same thing in reverse. And so we were able to work through that. And it really was, I think, the building that first rung of the ladder foundation that we built on how to scale this thing to all retailers, that you finally figured out, like, okay, I know that this is the right price point to be, and I know this is what it's going to work at retail. Because at the end of the day, you know what I know. What the difference between selling something at 79 cents or 89 cents does not change anybody's perception of buying. Now, 79 cents to $8 will.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But that's small. So we've had those conversations, like, how can I do it? Like, can I make more here? Because you have to be here. And that's how we structured that thing. And it really, really, I think, brought the buying team, the merchandising teams to the table, because they were really vested in what I was doing as what I was trying to create for them, and putting stuff in the box. And so we had this symbiotic relationship that was codependent upon each other, but it was solely based on honesty and based on understanding each other's business model. And you know, that was the backbone of how this thing really launched and got going.
So when Grimway came in, what year was that? When did they take it?
Like 2000 and change. Like that, 2001,
so
something like
2001, 2002.
Yeah,
And so
something
how
like
many
that.
acres?
So at the time, if memory serves correctly, Callow was, we were about 6,000 acres, and we were farming somewhere around 4,000. We had carrots at that time. And of course, that was a big draw for Grimway, because we had a carrot deal. And of course, they sell a carrot or two, I hear. And so at that point, they had, I can't remember what Grimway had. I think they probably had 6, 8, 7, 10,000 acres. But of course, you know, they're doing the crop and rotating and all the other different stuff they've done. And so it was a pretty substantial deal, but it was, you know, we had a really, like I said, you know, Bob gave us a great runway, you know, to go off and try to build this thing. And it's like, you know, how much ground do we need to buy? Where do we need to buy? And I'll never forget, it's like, we should go grow asparagus. And he's like, let's go do 80 acres. Like, why don't we start with one, right? But that was the mentality. And I love that, right? Because you had leadership that wasn't afraid.
Yeah.
And he had leadership that saw the vision that you created back to him, and were able to share back, like, this is what I think we can do. This is what we are doing, and I think we can do this next. And so that was beautiful to have. So, you know, did that for a long period of time. And then at the end of my tenure of time there, we were pushing close to 40,000 organic acres.
And how many did you say you started with in the early 2000s? What do you think it was? 6,000?
It's about 6,000.
6,000.
So that was a pretty good size growth.
Damn,
That was a pretty good size
growth. Yeah, for sure.
It's a lot
And
of fun.
what kind of commodity, like when you were in those early days, 4 or 5 commodities? What were the big ones?
No, I mean, early on, yeah, sure, we started ramping up, but it was all basically veg items, cooking greens, you know, brassicas, lettuces, and stuff like that. And they're progressing. At one point, we had 65 plus items working through the system, you know. So it was, you know, again, so it's going back to that perspective piece. It's really unique to be able to sit here today in this environment and think back to that environment, because I have that perspective, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, and I say this all the time. It's like, you know, you got guys who've been in this for 15 years, and you got guys who've been in this for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's an interesting position to be in. It's an interesting position to look at, because I think that it got that wide-eyed vision that remembers when and sees those opportunities. It's some of the things I work on now in marketing strategy with people. It's like, oh, here's some holes. Here's some things to rethink about. It's pretty fun.
Well, yeah, no, and I mean, in the organic space, I mean, like when it was originally, again, it was people that were passionate about
100%.
that it was really the dirt and being connected to the earth. There was a whole, like I say, passion that obviously when you get to become big corporations and make it where everybody can get organics and have it, you lose some of that emotional side. But
100%.
I'm curious, who determined if something was truly organic or not organic back in those days, right? I mean, did you just get to call yourself an organic
Pretty much,
grower?
yeah. I mean, back
there was no CCOF. Or
no, well, CCOF was around for a while, but no, it was not until 1990 when things really started to get organized. So that was a wild, wild west.
Yeah.
And post Alar, oh my God, the stories post Alar. That's that 60-minute story hit on a Sunday night. Monday morning, it is a complete shit show. I mean, the phones are blowing up. Every retailer in America is like, I got to have organic, and there's nothing around. Right? There's a handful of this and a little bit of that. It's nothing like it was today. And I can remember guys, and they're out of business and long gone in this world, but I can remember opening up backs of trucks to put a pallet of something on, and all of a sudden there's like 18 pallets of cauliflower wrapped in clear plastic bag with an orange organic sticker.
Oh my
there
gosh.
wasn't cauliflower in any zip code in California at the very moment, right? It's like, if we couldn't find, we didn't know it was there.
Yeah.
This guy certainly didn't know it was there. So it was the wild, wild west. And then it got a little bit more organized and it got a little bit more structured and there was a little more, checks and balances. But it's a totally integrity-based business, right? You can say one thing during the daytime and open up the secret cabinet and fly something on at night. And, who's going to know? And that's a real challenge in today's world, right? Because we're not really in a very trusting world in a lot of ways. So it's good to see the organic industry grow. It's great to see the work that USDA has done to strengthen the organic, enforcement to make things a little bit, I don't want to say tougher, but a little bit fair and a little bit more in line with what's happening. Because when they wrote the law in the 1990s, they had no idea organics would be a global business. It wasn't written to be a global business. I mean, the web wasn't created back then. Pluto was still a planet, right? So it's good to see us after this much time, which is a long time, finally change and get a little bit more, regroup, reorganize, restructure a little bit, but for the long haul. Because at the end of the day, because you're an integrity-based business, you've got to protect the customer. You've got to protect the consumer because we've gone through it, we've seen it. You lose the consumer's trust, it doesn't matter what your price point is anymore.
Right.
You're doomed. We've seen it, the recall. You've seen it in our own space with the things that have happened. So consumer trust is something that's really, really valuable to this industry. And it's incredibly important, I think, that the industry continue to embrace that and recognize their obligation to the consumer beyond the retailer. Yes, you're selling the retailer, but your obligation truly is the million people that are in that retailer store.
Right.
You can't forget them.
You and I've known each other quite a while.
We've had experiences
We've
together.
had experiences together. We could tell a few of those stories. A couple that I wouldn't want you to tell, but
I can share videos.
yeah, I know you can. No, I would like to tell. I know you through your family.
Yeah.
You've been touched by cancer.
Yep.
You
Couple
guys
times.
have had a couple of different battles.
We have.
I know, particularly with your son when he was in high school.
Yep.
Brain tumor, correct?
My son was incredibly active, football player. Came home one day, was just not feeling great. Thought maybe he had a cold or allergies. He was a little bit dizzy. He was just having some real problems, and it really progressed. And we were trying to figure out what's cooking and what's going on, and thought maybe he got his bell rung. Maybe he got a concussion playing football. And back then, what?
That's right. He was a center, right?
Yeah, he was a long snapper. He was playing center, playing on the line, and back then playing on the line, and so we thought maybe it was a concussion or this and that, and we went in and said, well, we better get it checked out. We went and ran an MRI, and he walked on there. He walked out of the room, and he came back out, and I was sitting there and goes, oh, they found a mass on my brain. I'm like, I'm sorry, I must have missed what you just said. What are you talking about? It's like, yeah, and lo and behold, he had a astrocytoma on his brain, which is not a very good kind of cancer to have. And there's two versions, adult version, and then there's a pediatric version. And the pediatric version is the one you kind of want because it is livable, and the adult version is not. And so was a very trying time. You find out your kid is, active and healthy, and all of a sudden he's not. And it was an arduous journey to try to find good care for him and try to figure out where to go with him. We struggled with a few doctors. We had doctors that literally told us that he was faking it, that the symptoms that he had weren't in relation to having brain cancer. Like, we weren't dealing with the brain cancer. They were worried about his symptoms. I'm like, I'm a little shocked. So it was a really
That seems hard to believe since they had an MRI.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's
and
like,
it was a trip. I mean, it was just a mouth drop moment, right? I mean, and he spent nights up at the hospital getting scanned, all these different work they did. It's like, now we think he's faking half of it. It's like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, because you started in the Bay Area.
Started in the Bay Area, and that
Yeah.
was just a complete debacle. And I just got super revved up one day, and I just walked out of my office, and I went home, and I got on the Google machine, and I researched and typed and dug and made a phone call to Children's Hospital in Boston and reached out to them and asked if they would look at his case, and they did, and we sent them the files and the CDs and all that stuff, and we got a phone call from them, I don't know, first part of December, and they said, yeah, we want to see him December 20th back in Boston. And my wife was on the phone. I was like, great, well, what, do you want to do an appointment? How long, blah, blah, blah. She goes, no, we're doing an appointment. We're doing surgery. And they brought him back in, and he was back there for 5 weeks, and they took that thing out of his head, and he finished up school with honors, played 2 years of college football at Oregon State. He's in the produce business, kicking doors down and making a big name for himself. I couldn't be more proud, but it's an interesting moment to walk through, you know,
Yeah.
and having done it with your son, I've done it as well with my wife, and it's an overwhelming experience as a parent. It's an overwhelming experience, but it's also one of the best experiences as well that you can take away from that moment and learn to appreciate things in a much different light. You know, love and kindness means a lot more than it did before in a lot of ways. Patience is a good thing. You know, respect of others and understanding and being an advocate is something that you learn from that experience too. Don't let anybody do the lift for you, right? Do the lift yourself when it comes to your medical care and stuff like that. So it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it sucked, don't get me wrong, but the experience itself was pretty magical.
And your wife's battled twice?
Twice. And that was, you know, as well was crazy dealing with her and what her prognosis was, which was less than a 10% survival rate. She's here today. So it's amazing what happens out there. I mean, it's a wild ride.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's a great, but it gives you a sense of perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think your perspective is certainly, you know, and you and I have talked a little bit about it, but it makes you look at the world completely different.
It really does. It really does, and it makes you look at it in a positive way. And I think that, you know, you've got two choices in life, right? You can be positive, you can be negative. You know, which one do you want to be? And you know, quite frankly, being positive, sure, a hell of a lot better than being negative. We all have our moments, right? But I really believe that, you know, if you center yourself around love and kindness with people, and you work to make sure that you know, there's more to conversations. You know, the same thing every time. It leads to how's your family, right?
Yeah.
It's like that's the question, and that's what matters. Right, and when you get to people and you touch people at that level and you put yourself out there to be a part of their lives in a meaningful way, I think it empowers you to do it again. I think it empowers you to do it to somebody else because it feels good.
Yeah.
And I think we need more of it out there in the world.
Well, man, that's a excellent place to get to the close, because I think you wrapped it up. I mean, that you know, and then me and you talked a little bit about you've got your podcast and kind of where you're focused and you know, a little bit similar, but us for sure, you know, Ed and I, mostly us, a couple of friends just, you know, frankly shooting the shit and talking about things about how life and how we've kind of journeyed through and, you know, ideally how we can help each other out along the way, man.
I 100% agree, and that's the basis of what I try to do in mine. Is that I say this all the time. I don't want to tell people what to think, but I want to put you in a position to think, right? And I think it's really important. So when I do my show, and we're pushing almost 200 episodes now of our deal, and you know, I've met a lot of really interesting people. But I will say, I think the 2 years of doing this podcast have probably been some of the most influential things in my life that I've changed a lot of positions and a lot of my thought process over because of the people that I've been able to meet and the people I've been able to research. Like, you know, I put energy into everybody that comes on, and it's been really a magical ride. It's been a ton of fun. I've really enjoyed it. I met some amazing people. I met some amazing people doing some really cool things that give you that stop and pause moment.
Yeah.
It's almost selfish. I mean, I've gotten some comments before from good friends that give me a hard time and like to razz me about, well, you know, this is all, you just want to hear yourself talk or you just want to see yourself. It's selfish, but not in that way. Like, I love listening to people and listening to their stories and frankly, for my own, like this midlife crisis, I guess if I am still midlife, but trying to make up for lost time and do everything I can and live life to its fullest and appreciate every day. And I mean, it all sounds super corny and kind of, you know, ridiculous sometimes, but it's really the truth. I mean, it's every day is, you know, a gift, and we're lucky to be here. Everybody is. And once you've gone through what, you know, some of the stuff you've been sharing with us, you know, obviously it hits a lot harder and obviously right at home, not closer to home, right at home.
Yeah. I think that, you know, it's so important to stop and get perspective. I was talking to somebody about that today, about finding that perspective and balance in their life. They're busy, sales are up, they're grinding. you got to find that hour. You have to take an hour, dedicate 1 hour every week during your workday that is 1 hour devoted to you. That you just walk away, you step away, you take a walk, you do whatever it is. I don't care, play pickleball, go paint, do whatever it is, but purposely take an hour away from your job to give yourself that recharge back. And by doing that, you find yourself being re-energized. Exactly to your point, right? You got to find those things to really help yourself navigate through all the crazy.
Amen to all that, Todd.
Yeah, buddy.
Man, it's been, I knew it'd be fun. It'd be a good time. I knew it'd be short, but, look, that's
The story of my life.
Since we have so much more to cover, maybe we'll get an invite. Maybe we'll get an invite on his podcast.
He's not.
He's not going to invite
He
us?
likes really famous people.
Okay.
I've invited you. You don't come. You don't make time. I'll invite you once, and I'll ask you a second time.
I'll be there. He didn't.
He has invited us. Yes, we just need to make time, and we will.
We need to go do it and hang out. Look, the only way we're going to solve anything in this planet is by having good, open, honest conversations, tackle hard issues, get along, right? Work through stuff, talk it through. I firmly believe it. It's how the success that I've seen in this industry that's outside our doors right now.
Yeah.
It was the backbone of what was laid out that opened the runway for where people walk today. And I think that the only way we're going to do it is by having these conversations and being open and honest and work through things and put ideas out there for people. Again, we don't have to tell people what to think. Let's just get people to think.
I like it. All right, Todd. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the summit here.
Thank you, brother.
Kiss some babies, shake some hands. Do what you
No,
do.
now I'm not going to touch anybody's hand because you're freaking me out about the germaphobe thing. Now I'm going to go
Be sure
get
and
some
wash.
gloves.
You're washing your hands.
I'm going to get some gloves and just, touch people.
I was so prepared for the pandemic when it came.
You never left your house. You had to be a freak. I mean,
I was not. No, I was just prepared. I was like, when they started.
You've been in training.
When they started, I'd been training. Yeah, I was like, wait, finally everybody's going to start washing their hands. That's good.
man, I was flying during the pandemic. I was flying at the beginning of the pandemic. I did 70-something nights in the hotels during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I
was Lysoling remote controls and light switches in hotels years ago.
Before pandemic.
You know what? But I could see
before.
you doing that. I could see you carrying you have like a tool belt of like.
No, they make these little
Lysol.
Lysols that look like a Banaka can. I mean, not much bigger than one. I just stick it in my shaving kit, get in my room, and spray.
Now they get a little plastic bag on it.
Well, I would do that with my dry cleaning bags. If I ran out of spray, I'd wrap the remote control in the dry cleaning bag. That's a hack.
Literally, you two guys need therapy.
That's what we're here.
This is not. It ain't working. It ain't working.
That's what we're here. Okay.
All right.
We're getting the high sign.
We are getting the high sign like many times.
We'll be back in a few minutes. We've got
Thank you guys. Yeah.
Joseph Bunting from United Supermarkets on next.
All right. Thanks. We'll see y'all soon.
boys.
Thanks, Todd. We'll see you.
Thanks, Todd.
And we're out.